Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 121, a sappy ending. The episode begins with Ash and the gang on their way to Violet City, going through a forest in the process, when they realize that a whole bunch of the trees are missing their leaves, but don't look damaged otherwise. Brock states how weird this is, as it wasn't fall yet, and the trees didn't appear to be burnt either, and those are the only things that he could think of that would cause the trees to lose their leaves. And it was especially curious because some trees hadn't quite lost them yet, and some had, so it obviously couldn't have been a fire. They don't wonder for long, though, as soon after this, Pikachu spots the cause of the tree's downfall, which was a horde of mysterious Pokemon. Ash uses his Pokedex on them, and it tells him that they're known as Heracross, a new Pokemon in Johto, mentioning their docile nature, great strength, and how their favorite food was tree sap, explaining why they were going after the trees. Wanting to both capture a new Pokemon, his first Johto one, and also save the tree from being destroyed in the process, Ash decides to try and capture the Heracross. However, he is stopped by a man who reveals his name as Woodruff, and that he is a Pokemon Ranger, particularly a Forest Ranger. Well, he doesn't really stop Ash, but he does warn them that if he caught Heracross, then he would cause a great deal of damage to the forest, in turn. Ash is confused by Woodruff's claim, as he thought that he'd be doing the forest a favor if he caught the Heracross, as it would mean that less trees would be getting destroyed. Just then, though, they see what Woodruff meant when they see a Butterfree come in and try and eat some of the sap that Heracross had released from the tree. Woodruff explains that the Heracross and Butterfree were both extremely important to each other, and important to the forest ecosystem, because the Butterfree couldn't get the sap that they needed to eat themselves, and had to rely on the Heracross to use their strength to break open the trees for them. So, if all the Heracross disappeared, sure, it would result in the trees getting destroyed less, but it would also put an end to the Butterfree population. Basically, the Butterfree needed the Heracross because they ate whatever they left behind. Hearing this, Ash now doesn't want to catch the Heracross, knowing that it could disrupt the forest. However, Misty thinks that Ash should still at least catch some of the Heracross, as they could still end up destroying the forest. Woodruff assures Misty, though, that the Heracross and Butterfree weren't the ones causing all the trees to be destroyed, as they would always know when to stop hitting the tree for sap, and they would allow more trees to grow before fully destroying one, so that the number of trees in the actual forest would usually remain pretty much the same. Woodruff explains that the true cause for the trees being destroyed was another Pokemon in the forest, which he called the Invaders, who weren't as kind to the trees and were more selfish. As if on cue, Pikachu senses these invaders coming their way, and they reveal themselves to be Pinsir. Sure enough, they go on the trees and start eating the sap, scaring away the Butterfree in the process, meaning that not only were the Butterfree not getting their food, but the Pinsir were taking way more than they needed. The Pinsir then try and scare the Heracross off of the tree as well, with Ash and Misty yelling at the Heracross to not let the other Pokemon attack them and do something about it, with Ash demanding the Pinsir to leave the Heracross the fuck alone. Ash and Misty's encouragement seemed to be working, as they caused the Heracross to fly up and fight back against the Pinsir as Ash and Misty cheered them on. However, the Heracross soon retreated in fear when they saw how sharp Pinsir's pincers were. Ash and Misty are disappointed, but Woodruff explains that it was just in the Heracross's nature to leave, as they didn't like fighting, and they especially didn't like weapons, and they viewed the Heracross's pincers as a major weapon. This causes Brock to worry about the fact that the Heracross weren't even willing to fight to protect their forest. Like, yeah, I get that they hate fighting, but this is kind of self-defense, because if you don't fight, your forest is fucked. Ash then notices, however, there was still one Heracross fighting back, as it fought to protect a Butterfree from the whole horde of attacking Pinsir. However, the Heracross wasn't doing too well, becoming ganged up upon, as the Butterfree managed to fly away in fear, but Heracross wasn't able to do the same, so now the Heracross was just the one in danger. Ash decided to take action, sending out his Bulbasaur and having it use Vine Whip on the Pinsir to knock them off of the tree and save the Heracross. Ash instructs the Heracross to take this opportunity to fly off to safety, but it was too weak from the battle against the Pinsir, so it couldn't, allowing the Pinsir to climb back up the tree and try and attack him yet again. Ash steps in with his Pikachu this time and uses Thunder Shock on the Pinsir, but unfortunately, this just makes them mad and has them direct their attention away from the Heracross towards Ash and the gang. Thankfully, though, Pikachu is able to send them running away by scaring them off with a Thunder attack, as Heracross watches in admiration. Heracross, now saved, flies down from the tree and goes up to Bulbasaur and Pikachu. Ash assumes this was because the Heracross was grateful and it wanted to thank Bulbasaur and Pikachu. However, it was only because the Heracross was still hungry for some more pollen, so it sucks some pollen out of Bulbasaur's bulb, which pisses off Bulbasaur, causing him to use a Vine Whip and hit the Heracross. This Heracross's utter desperation for food causes Ash and the gang to wonder if it was really trying to protect the Butterfree after all, or if it just wanted to protect its own food. Anyways, Ash and the gang were satisfied with the fact that the Pinsir were gone now, so that meant that they shouldn't come back, right? But Woodruff, on the other hand, was still worried, as he explains that the Pinsir always tended to come back, even if they were scared off by something. He explains that it never used to be this way, as the Pinsir lived on the opposite side of the river, and they were usually content with staying where they were, but revealed that something had been causing them to suddenly begin crossing the river and come into the Heracross's territory. He states that the Pinsir could likely only be stopped if they found out what was causing them to come to the Heracross's territory in the first place, and requests Ash and the gang's help. Misty is hesitant, as she's terrified of all bug Pokemon, even the Heracross, so she just wants to get the fuck out of there, but Ash and Brock, on the other hand, are willing to help. So, Misty reluctantly goes along anyways, not wanting to be left behind, as Woodruff leads Ash and the gang through the forest toward the Pinsir territory, so that they could explore what was potentially making them cross. As they were passing through, they reached a blockage, so Ash sent out his Bulbasaur to use Razor Leaf to exterminate it. When he did, though, he spotted the Heracross from earlier, following them. Ash assumed this was because the Heracross was scared of the pincer and wanted a trusty trainer like him to protect him, but Misty corrected him, reminding him that Heracross probably just saw that Ash had sent Bulbasaur out and wanted more of its pollen. Bulbasaur obviously isn't a fan of Misty's suggestion, so he fires a Razor Leaf attack at the Heracross in an attempt to scare him off. This scares him off for a while, but as soon as the Heracross realizes that Ash and the gang were disappearing, he immediately gets the courage to still follow them. He still follows them even as they reach the end of the forest and arrive at a canyon that separated the Heracross and pincer sides of the forest. Ash recalls Bulbasaur and questions how the fuck they were going to get across as Woodruff calmly led them to a bridge that he had used to cross the area multiple times. However, the bridge was now destroyed for some reason. Misty then sees the pincer, who were getting across the canyon by jumping along tree branches. Upon seeing the pincer, Ash accuses them of being the ones to have destroyed the bridge, but Woodruff states that even their pincers didn't seem powerful enough to do so, adding that the bridge could have only been destroyed by a human. Ash and the gang wonder who the fuck this could be. In disbelief at the fact that any human would willingly destroy an easy way for them to get across. Ash and the gang then question how the fuck they were supposed to get over the canyon with their one way destroyed when they see the Heracross pushing on a tree. Misty gets mad at the Heracross for still following them, accusing it of only wanting Bulbasaur's pollen, but Brock then tells Misty to stop, as he realizes that the Heracross was trying to help them by pushing the tree down. After a few minutes, the Heracross successfully pushes over the tree, creating a makeshift bridge, allowing Ash and the gang to cross, with Misty being hesitant to follow, but she still does. Heracross still follows as well, along with Togepi. Now being on the pincer's side of the forest, Woodruff leads them to the pincer's main home, the largest tree in the forest. Despite it being their home, though, Ash and the gang only noticed a singular pincer on the tree, which indicates that the rest of them must have indeed been scared away. Woodruff realizes why this was, as this pincer was not even an actual pincer, but a robot pincer instead, which he realized when he saw the two large tanks on its back, and notices the robot sucking out sap with a hose as opposed to eating it naturally. As Ash and the gang wonder who could have built this, they then see Team Rocket reveal themselves. Surprise, surprise, they were probably the ones that cut the fucking bridge, too. Team Rocket wastes no time doing their motto, revealing their plan to steal all the sap from the trees and sell it for a huge price. Meowth also explains how they initially came across the sap, explaining that they were walking through the woods, starving, when he began to smell something sweet, after falling to the ground in hunger. Just smelling something gave him the energy he needed to run to where the smell was coming from, which was revealed to them to be sap from a tree. As soon as they arrived, they immediately started enjoying the sap, but then realized that they could sell it all for a huge pile of money, and that's what they were going to do. Ash and the gang accuse Team Rocket of upsetting the natural balance in the forest even more so than the actual pincer, and demand that they stop. Ash insists on a battle to stop them, which Jessie and James accept as they send out their Lickitung and Victory Bell. However, neither of these Pokemon were interested in fighting, as they were too entranced by the tree sap, and proceeded to eat some of it. James was in disbelief at the fact that Victory Bell was actually eating something other than him for once, and took the opportunity to try and run away from Victory Bell, but when Victory Bell noticed him running, he then changed his target from the sap back to James. Aw man. Seeing that Jessie and James's Pokemon were useless, Meowth gets the idea to use the pincer robot to attack Ash and the gang, which he does so by using a remote control to control it. Ash sends out his Bulbasaur in an attempt to have it use Razor Leaf to destroy the pincer robot, but the leaf simply is deflected by Pincer's steel pincers. Well, artificial steel pincers. Bulbasaur then tries a Vine Whip, though, and manages to wrap it up and send it spinning, allowing Pikachu to then attack it with a Thundershock. However, Meowth just laughs at this, as the pincer wasn't electric-proof, no, but it instead was able to use the electricity to recharge its batteries, thus making it stronger. It then expels the rest of the electricity from its pincers and sends it back at Ash and the gang, knocking them down. The robot pincer then walks up to Ash and the gang, ready to fucking kill them, but in a Deus Ex Machina moment, Heracross steps in and starts pushing against the pincer. However, Meowth orders the pincer to fight back, and it does, pushing the Heracross as well. The robot and the Pokemon proceed to fight each other, as Ash and the gang manage to get up from the Thundershock and cheer on Heracross, not stepping in, because they want the Heracross to have the chance to prove itself. Misty then cheers extra loud, despite Heracross being a bug Pokemon, as she puts her fear aside to give the Heracross some motivation. This extra bit of motivation helps the Heracross push against the pincer with even more force, beginning to defeat the pincer robot. This causes Team Rocket to panic and accuse Meowth of not operating the robot properly, so Jessie and James both try to retrieve the controller from him, and this essentially turns into a huge-ass argument, which results in the remote control being destroyed in the process, leaving Pincer unable to be controlled at all. With the robot Pincer unable to fight back, Ash and the gang go up to it and remove its sap tanks so it can't store any more sap, and they can take back all that it already had extracted. And then Heracross proceeds to shove its horn into the pincer, lifting it up into the air, after placing it on its shoulders, and up in the air, it lands on Team Rocket, sending both it and Team Rocket blasting off. Heracross does a little happy dance as it wins, and Ash and Misty cheer him on. He had done it. With the pincer robot now gone, Ash and the gang observe as the pincer return to their home, leaving the Heracross and Butterfree in peace. Ash and the gang then return to the Heracross and Butterfree side, and see this for themselves, as the Heracross and Butterfree peacefully eat some sap from a tree, being sure not to overexert it. Woodruff assures Ash and the gang that the pincer wouldn't overexert the forest either, as since they were now only on their side, they knew their limits, and they actually had enough food to get by. Ash and the gang then say goodbye to Woodruff and the Heracross, once again congratulating the Heracross on actually standing up for its forest. Ash and the gang then leave the forest to proceed onward to Violet City when Pikachu notices that the Heracross had also left the forest and was trailing behind them. This leads Ash to believe that the Heracross wanted to leave the forest, now believing that it was in good hands, and instead come with Ash and the gang, and he tries to prove his belief by throwing a Pokeball at the Heracross. Sure enough, the Heracross doesn't move out of the way as the Pokeball captures it, making him Ash's new Pokemon and his first Pokemon in the Johto region. Ash was amazed at the fact that a Pokemon had willingly decided to join him. He didn't even have to battle it, and shouted with joy at his first Johto capture.